Welcome to Your Money, Your Retirement, Your Life, the show that helps you make the most of all three. Hosted by Drew Pelton of Drew Pelton Investment Services, where the focus is income first, growth second, and your goals always.
You're listening to Your Money, Your Retirement, Your Life. I'm your host, Drew Pelton. Thanks for being with me this morning. Today, as always, I'm talking about investing for success in retirement. Shouldn't that be everybody's goal and objective? I believe one big question is, how do you invest for success, and do you really know how to do that right? That's a big question, and there's much to say about it. Why do I have a show named Your Money, Your Retirement, Your Life? Well, because that's what you need to think about in a very focused way, and with a sentiment of, it is my money, it is my retirement, it is my life. And when you start to do that, or you do that, I believe it's a lot easier for one to start to make good, wise, prudent decisions about your money, your retirement, your life. I see too often people are just not embracing this sentiment. There's a little bit of laziness, or a little bit of fear, or a little bit of our human nature sometimes just to procrastinate. And certainly on the level of fear, it makes sense that when people fear something, or they don't have knowledge, or it's both, because perhaps you don't have adequate knowledge, then maybe you fear you might not make the right decision. So I think that when you start with the sentiment of, it's my money, it's my retirement, it's my life, and then follow it up with, I must get it right for me, the retiree, for me and my family, for me and my legacy, for me and my estate planning. And once you embrace that sentiment, I believe then truly you can begin to make bigger and better decisions, including getting complimentary reviews and analysis wherever you're going to do that. Your Money, Your Retirement, Your Life is an important name. It's a name of the show, but it has a message. And my name is Drew. I thank my mother for that. If I may, it's not Andrew, it's Drew. I do come from solid roots, and I come from a place where hard work makes the difference. And I know about dedication, commitment, and being fired up. I wish I knew in my early years what I know today. And I'm sure many of us could say that. And that leads me to thinking and talking about planning versus not planning and process versus transactions and products, or product buying / selling. Let me say it again. There's really two ways to approach financial planning and retirement planning. One is a process of planning, or a planning process. That's one way to do it, which is, I am certain, in my opinion, and I believe it can be proven, it is the best thing to do. And it's a slowed down process. It's truly a fiduciary process, and it's about you, the investor, you, the retiree, and it's about customization and tailoring. And it takes time to build that house, and often you need to build the estate planning house along with it and get that integrated. On the other side, or versus planning and process, or process planning, is too often, I see too many retirees, there's a transaction approach, there's a product buying approach by the investor, and when it really probably should be not just product buying, and that could be investments. It could be mutual funds, or an array of various market investments, or it could be annuities. The problem is it's so much product buying, and where it's falling under the umbrella of it's buy and hold, stay put, you'll be okay, don't do anything, don't change anything, just do the same thing you did in the accumulation phase. Well, it's crazy to think like that, I believe, because when you're in the distribution phase, the retirement phase of your life, you are not adding money. You are either needing to take money out, or you are going to need to take money out at some point in the future, whether it's a future need or whether it's because the government requires you to by way of the RMD. So all of that said, today I'm going to focus in for helping you understand what the industry is truly like, meaning the financial services industry. And there's primarily two sides to it. And effectively, it's the backbone of the industry. It's the backbone of protection for you, the investor. And it's the backbone that requires licensed individuals to abide by certain rules, regulations, etc. So we're going to talk about that because there is the uninsured, guaranteed side of the world, which unprotected, it's non-guaranteed, unprotected side of the world. And then there's the protected, guaranteed, insured side of the world. So basically, the way to think about it is, if you're thinking about non-guaranteed, not protected, uninsured, you're talking about market investments. And that's regulated by federal agencies. Secondly, the other side of the world is the guaranteed, protected, insured side of the world. And that side of the world typically has to do with annuities and fixed annuities, particularly because there is a hybrid annuity side, which is typically variable annuities or variable life insurance. It's a hybrid where there's some insurance aspect of it or some guaranteed aspect of it in those variable annuities or variable life insurance. So I want to share some of the backbone with you just for your information so you know how it works. But I also want to tell you that even though there are these regulations and these regulatory bodies, that often it's not as pure and wonderful as you might think, and that there is often confusion and often misunderstanding. Recently, I have had the opportunity, unfortunately, to have to tell a lot of people about this, and I will tell you that I realize how uninformed people are. Although many people do have sufficient licenses or enough licenses to effectively offer the universe of choices, very often there are advisors that don't offer everything, and they're too often product salesmen, as I was talking about earlier, just a few minutes ago, where it's not planning and process, it's more transactional and product selling. And sometimes people have the licenses for both sides of the world, the guaranteed side of the world and the non-guaranteed side of the world, but very often they have their own agenda. So you want to be aware of these things. So I'm going to break down some of these things for you, or I'm going to give it to you very basically, so hopefully you have a better understanding. No longer is the fear of death the greatest fear that retirees have, according to recent studies. What is that greatest fear, according to recent studies, that retirees have? What is that primary fear that retirees have today? I asked that question in seminars, and it seems like everybody had choir practice before they walked into my seminar and workshop, and they all say, running out of money, or something to that effect. Running out of money, not having enough money, having more life than money. It is the biggest fear retirees have. I want to say that although we are talking about the backbone of the industry and as well as, and leading and bleeding into, so to speak, know who you're working with, choose wisely. The fact is that just because there are regulatory agencies on the federal side and the state side doesn't mean that you don't need to do your homework and your due diligence to know who you're working with. Because some advisors may get you in trouble with their thinking, their approaches, their strategies, their offerings that may not just get the job done for you like you need. So let's start with, when I talk about the backbone of the industry, well, the backbone fundamentally on a regulatory perspective is on the federal side. You have the Securities Exchange Commission, the SEC. Now, I know all you sports fans immediately go to, our conference, the SEC, but that's why I say it's the Securities Exchange Commission, so that you understand federally, regulatorily, the SEC that I'm talking about here has to do with the federal government and their oversight of the entire securities world, so to speak, in this industry and for this industry, and all that is involved and all who are involved, meaning organizations, individuals, etc. So the SEC does regulate and oversee all securities in the world of market investments. In other words, non-guaranteed types of investments. And before I talk more about that, let me just do a comparison and say, on the guaranteed side of the world, where people are utilizing annuities, and there's a huge amount of people that are utilizing fixed type of annuities, whether it's a fixed only annuity or fixed indexed annuity. But these are annuities that are not variable annuities or variable life insurance. These are fixed as in guaranteed. The word fixed means guaranteed. So that part of the world is overlooked by or is regulated by the states. Well, there's 50 states, so most organizations or insurance companies or annuity companies that are offering programs, products, annuities, etc., they do it in most states. And there is a uniform code that most of the states follow as fundamental practices. However, each and every state can have their own nuances. So if there's an insurance company, annuity company that is looking to present or offer a product in a particular state, it could have some nuances in terms of the contracts. Now, often what you find is you may have, as an example, 30, 40 states all accepting the same contract that somebody puts out. And there may be some states such as California or New York or Massachusetts. You can probably guess where I'm going with this, or Illinois, or sometimes, but even Florida. So the bottom line is the states oversee, have oversight, and are the regulatory agency, or it's the states that have a regulatory overlook for guaranteed products, fixed products. And then back to the other side, it's the Securities Exchange Commission, and there's FINRA with oversight with advisors and the recording of what licenses that advisors have. And so this oversight is to keep the rules abided by. But I would say, as fast as I say there's these regulatory bodies, you want to understand that with this oversight, it doesn't mean that you, the investor, doesn't have a responsibility to truly understand who you may be talking to and who you may be working with. A couple of things to think about is just across the board on either side of the fence, meaning the non-guaranteed side of the world, market investments, or the guaranteed side of the world, the fixed side of the world, you want to understand that what is the credentials of the individual? How many years experience do they have? What do they do? What's their experience? What's the primary client base they work with? What programs do they offer? Are they pretty much a one-trick pony type of a organization? Or are they too broad brush? Or how about this one? Some of the bigger firms, if you don't have $1.5 to $2 million minimum to invest, you may not get attention. I know we have a new client, and I do understand. I'm going to give you a number here. Don't think that everybody has $4 million, because I know it by the Drew Pelton survey, and the Drew Pelton survey is my experience in listening to people and seeing what people do. But we have a new client, and her assets are this is about a year ago when she came on board, and she was with Vanguard, and it was very cookie cutter. It was mutual funds. She was underperforming what the S&P 500 index was, which you should know that 80 to 90% of mutual funds do underperform the S&P 500 index in a 20-year study. But the bottom line is Vanguard told her that they were not going to provide to her their upscale planning, advisory, high-level services because she only had $4 million. Only had $4 million. Now, I know some of you are listening and you're saying, oh my goodness, if I only had $4 million, I'd be a lot happier. Well, what am I saying is that many of these companies have gone to this approach where they're looking for the bigger assets. I know that by way of an advertising, Vanguard sent me personally to my home. In the advertisement, they bragged about how they had 30 million clients. I thought to myself, are you kidding me? You actually were willing to advertise that? There's 30 million clients that you have? How in the world can you really take care of that? Particularly in an industry, since COVID-19 particularly, it's amazing how many of these financial services representatives at these firms are working at home. The inefficiencies, the ineffectiveness that I see going on in this industry because of that alone is just amazing to me. Now, look, there are very good people, and I work with them, but I will have to tell you that myself and my staff, we have had to, over the years, discern greatly about who really knows what they're talking about. We have experienced so many representatives at so many different firms that say things, and I know through my experience they're not saying the right things, and that's really a big thing. So back to like when you're working with somebody, what experience should they have? Well, discernment is one, but the bottom line is, let me finish up the Vanguard story. $5 million. I mean, you have to have $5 million to get their top level service. I'm going to tell you, in our firm, you could have $250,000 or $100,000. We're going to treat you like a king or a queen. Now, if you have only $100,000 or $250,000, certainly you don't need that much attention. At higher amounts, $250,000 to $500,000, then normally there's more strategies and different approaches and more tax considerations, et cetera. And typically the greater the asset base that you have, you probably do need more planning. But for us, we're given the highest level needed advice and guidance, whoever you are, because people need help. And this industry has gotten to, and I say this industry, this financial services investment industry has gotten to a place where many people are not getting the care and the service that they need because the firms have put forth these minimums. Ken Fisher is a avid, rampant, I don't know what you want to call it, consistent advertiser. By the way, I can't imagine it's not tens and tens of millions of dollars every year. But recently, I've heard him change his tune where he would say, it used to be, oh, if you have $500,000, give us a call. As in, if you don't have 500,000, don't give us a call. Now, just recently, I heard it with my own ears. He said, if you have $1 million, what's my point? Vanguard, Ken Fisher, it's pretty much the industry, because I can tell you from my experience, whether it's Merrill Lynch or it's Morgan Stanley, I mean, particularly these bigger name firms, what often happens is that if you don't have what I see and hear from people, at least $1.5 to $2 million, you're just not getting the level of service. Now, I obviously can't say that that's for every individual, but I can tell you my experience and what I hear from people that come in the office and tell me what goes on. But even at $1 million, well, you might think that's a lot of money. And it's unfortunately, it's not as much money as you would like it to be, and with all the inflation that's happened, if you have $1 million. But the bottom line is that if you have $1 million in most firms, you're not getting the attention that most need, want, and I believe should have. And I can tell you, in our firm, Drew Pelton Investment Services, we're treating everybody as a king and a queen, like I just said. So you want to be aware of that. So the individual you're working with, do they have adequate experience? Do they have a complete openness? Are they doing planning and process with you? Are they taking the time with you? Are they truly doing all the blood work, diagnostic tests, height, weight, et cetera, get the medical history? I mean, obviously, I'm using an analogy now. But the point of it is, it should be like that, because in order to customize a wealth plan, like a good health plan, it takes time. And usually a wealth plan takes longer than a health plan, because medicine today can be pretty fast with diagnosing or evaluating what all the test results are to determine what you might need to do, how you might change your diet, or if you need prescriptions or therapy, etc. So, but in this wealth business, in this wealth management business, in this business of financial planning, investment planning, to really do it right with all the planning, and I'll just say it, I mean, all the planning, when we think about it, it's retirement planning, investment planning, financial planning, strategic planning, tax planning, estate planning, RMD planning, income planning. I mean, all this planning has to be synergistic and integrated. So that planning process is critically important in order to get a true customized plan for you, if the advisor you're working with truly has everything and isn't just trying to slot you into investments that are their preference. I believe it should be about what works for you first, and is it best of the best, because a true independent is going to be offering best of the best of all products, programs, investments, et cetera, et cetera. When I come back, I want to talk about captive, employed, or independent. In other words, there are advisors in different companies that are captive to a company, or there are advisors that are employed by a company, or there are advisors that are independent. Sometimes captive associates or advisors could be either employees or they could be independent. And so really, I might say that, are you captive? Is the advisor captive, or are they independent? And I want to say not all independents are the same. Not all independents offer the true universe of choices, and you want to be very careful there. The federal versus the state oversight on the two different sides of the world. I don't want to give you too much where you're thinking, oh my goodness, I don't need all that. Just give me a good advisor, and that's where I'm getting to. And you want to understand some of the things I'm saying with respect to the focus that many of these firms don't have when you don't have, according to them, enough money. And it's just the nature of the massiveness of the investment world. And you want to be careful not to get caught up in just cookie cutter approaches or disease of ease.